I discussed collaborative problem solving with addicted family members in the last two videos, and so far you've listened to the concept of connecting with a child or your loved one, building trust, having empathy rather than convincing, and helping your loved ones articulate and enact values that are either dormant or maybe they're telling them to you for the first time. But what about your values? If you don't already know us at the Life Process Program, you'll be forgiven for thinking that we're simply excusing antisocial behavior by saying, well, make sure that you understand your child first. It's almost like we could be saying, quit worrying about your kid's addictive involvement. It's totally fine. You're just being high strung. But actually, we're old school in some respects. At the same time as we explicate the role of collaboration and motivation in dialogue with troubled loved ones, we believe that your values and preferences are valuable. You get to preserve them. So in my last video, I promised that I would discuss boundaries and expectations. I have a few comments on the video, a few emails and messages. So I just want to give value to the people who I know are listening to or watching the video. So when it comes to boundaries and expectations, how do you introduce them and set them in your own home? And rather than a how-to video, I've asked Dr. Peele to join me to discuss the topic today, just so that I can get some feedback and you can see two people thinking about it in real time. I'm going to go over, there's three concepts. One is, how do I set realistic boundaries? And you want to think about, what can you tolerate? Where do you actually draw the line, and how can you stay consistent? The next topic is, can you use collaboration to inform your boundaries? So for instance, I think that sometimes if you become wise to another person's perspective and they become wise to yours, then you'll find flexibility where there wasn't before. And finally, we'll talk about collaboration with a child, ultimately leading to personal agency, not a reliance on you as a parent. So we'll get into it. Dr. Stanton Peele, thanks for joining me today.
It's a pleasure to join you in this and to follow your lead on this. Of course, you work with children in a system whose primary goal is at some point to complete that system and to become a functioning member of society. So you're not a hippy-dippy commentator who just says, oh, well, let's let people do what they want. You have a framework and you're paid a salary that people should be accomplished in that framework.
Well, there's a lead a horse to water saying, and I've noticed within the framework of my work in schools that you can't force somebody to believe something or care about something, but you can offer them understanding rather than some sort of a ploy to get them to do what you want them to do. Ultimately, I think a level of understanding sets a playing field for people to do somewhat what you want them to do, but you don't have to force it. So, thanks for entertaining this. I just want to go over some of these points that people asked about. There was this idea, yeah, collaboration's nice, but I've got a kid in my room using cocaine or Adderall all day, and I just can't tolerate it. So one big thing is, there were people who are saying I'm totally good with the concept of harm reduction. Like even could articulate to me, they said, we believe in harm reduction. We believe that you have to meet people where they are. You're not going to force them to change. And then again, I have a 17-year-old in my house, and I just doing drugs, and I can't allow them to use drugs in my home. So how do I square this? How do I meet somebody where they are when where they are is doing something that I can't allow? I'm wondering if you have thoughts on that before I even jump in.
Why don't you start it off, Zach? I think you have a good natural feeling for this.
Okay, so I think one point actually feeds into the other. So, yeah, I don't think values should be compromised. I don't think rules should be compromised. Because someone's doing something that you don't like or can't allow, still doesn't mean that you can't understand them. So I think the concept of harm reduction doesn't have to be incompatible with the idea of drawing boundaries. It's just that part of harm reduction or part of collaboration is getting to a point where you were listening to and understanding a person, what ails them, what they enjoy, what they like, how they're thinking in an empathic way without judging during that conversation. There is a point in all collaboration where everybody has to have their needs met. And so as a parent, especially, you're in specifically interesting spot to actually need to impose values in some way. That doesn't stop you from having the conversation in the first place and saying, look, I'm not going to beat you over the head during this conversation. Tell me what's up. So I think that that can kind of go into the next point, but that's how I think about it, is that you have your boundaries locked and loaded. Probably your child or the person who you love, who you're worried about, already has a sense of what your boundaries are. The problem is they're difficult to accomplish for that person for one reason or another. And the idea is to see if you can understand why they're difficult to accomplish so you can help them accomplish them.
I'll just paraphrase what I heard you say. You come into various situations, a parent, as an authority figure, where some things need to happen and some things are forbidden, but that's not a separate activity from understanding where people are coming from. You're always starting with understanding where people are coming from, both so that you understand it and so that they'll feel heard. And then you progress from there in negotiating each what your needs are.
Right. And I think by and large, people want to be understood. There's a really positive, engaging feeling when somebody feels understood. There's a sales tactic that I have a buddy who does sales, and actually he does pretty well. It's not clear to me whether the product sells itself or whether he's an amazing salesman or what. But his thing is, you have to convince a person that they want this thing that I'm selling. And I don't agree with that in sales or in life or in helping other people. I think that you're better off in a dialogue where you want somebody to understand your side and letting your guard down a little bit and actually understanding where they're coming from. So it's not explaining like, hey, here's what you need to do, because people don't like to be explained to. People aren't motivated by explanations about what they ought to do. People become motivated when they're able to be understood and they're led or guided a direction that they can go now that you understand them. So collaboration sometimes informs boundaries. What I mean by that is that once you have an understanding and a feeling of what another person wants or needs or why things are hard for them, you now are on the same playing field. And you probably understand something now that you didn't before. And it was the tough process of letting your guard down a little bit, not wanting to jump on somebody because you think, well, I can't live with that. You're totally listening, and you don't have to like anything about what you've heard, but you can understand. And once you understand and can begin collaborating and saying, it sounds like you're having difficulty doing this. And then the thing is, and then offer what your boundaries or limitations are, then you're working together. Sometimes in the process of working together, you realize maybe there is a little bit of flex to this boundary. Now that I know this, maybe I can be a little flexible on A, B, or C. And alternatively, and I think probably more importantly, there is an element of flexibility on the other end where, now that I'm being understood, maybe I could do this a little bit better, or maybe I should be thinking about this.
I can't improve on that, Zach. I'm sitting here tongue-tied, waiting to hear your next stage. I do have a version of working with children. I am a parent. I noticed a difference between me and other adults is that I think the kind of collaboration you're asking about, the other adult will say, well, if you want to graduate or get into a good university, and then you have to do A, B, and C. And that always strikes me as completely inauthentic and setting up not boundaries, but obstacles. And so I'd be sitting next to another adult, and then I would ask a question. I would say, well, how do you see yourself becoming a teacher or a dancer or an actress? What pathway do you see? And I simply want them to explicate it so that all the adults in the room are informed about that. And that strikes me, if somebody were watching it, I imagine someone might say, well, he's a psychologist. That's why he does it, although I don't think all psychologists do that. But my fundamental assumption is exactly like yours. Well, nobody ever does what you tell them to do. Children, most of all, clients, second most of all. And so you might as well find out where in the morass you actually are.
Mm. I like that. See, this is why I invited you on, because now you give me the phrase, are you actually setting boundaries or are you setting obstacles? That is what I'm trying to get at here. Boundaries, yes, important. Limitations, rules, yes, very important. You need to be able to live with whatever collaboration you're doing. You need to have agency in that if you're working with another human being. Saying these are my boundaries isn't the same thing as allowing for boundaries that are actually giving a person a framework to work in. Sometimes it's setting obstacles. Okay, last point. I want to just emphasize that the collaboration with a child or anyone, but especially a child, should ultimately lead to personal agency, not a reliance on you as a parent or a family member. Or in the adult world, if you're a helping person in a helping profession, you don't want your help, your collaboration with somebody to exist only in a collaborative framework in which you are working with the person to help them and pull them along forever. You would like for a collaborative effort to mean a person starts having agency. They're starting to be able to think about how they want to operate in the world. So collaboration isn't, let's talk about how I can support your addictive tendencies. That's not what harm reduction is, at least to us. We're not saying, yeah, you do drugs, you're always going to do drugs, you're probably going to be in this mess forever, but at least we can figure out some few steps forward. It's a bigger picture than that. It's, let me help you talk this out, and please help me understand. And then let's figure out a way that you'd like to go. What's your North Star? What gives you purpose? What is the attractive alternative or set of attractive alternatives to this thing that seems to be bogging you down? So that's my kid family member version. And I wonder if you have thoughts on that before we end.
Well, let's get back to the interacting with the child. So a child expresses a career goal. And my reaction might be, I don't know, maybe she can become a famous actress. Or my reaction can be, gosh, I don't think that's going to happen. Don't you have to be like a 6 foot tall beauty to get to be an actress? But that's not my goal in life, figuring out the future. My goal in life is that this individual, this young person, is going to be out in the world. They're going to realize things quicker and more hard-edged than I am. Oh my God, I can't become a famous actress. And then the issue becomes, what then? The issue is, how do they not, the goal of the interaction is how they navigate life, not whether they become an actress or a doctor or anything like that. And when you reframe your concept of what the purpose of this interaction is, it becomes easy as pie to say, well, I'm going to let them imagine navigating this situation, because they are going to be navigating this situation, and we're practicing navigation.
Right. So the collaborative effort, the collaboration, is the value in it is the meta awareness of how you solve problems, how a person can solve problems in life. And that's why I spent so much time on just talking about how to begin a discussion and how not to screw it up, because setting that platform that's a launching pad for further interaction and then further problem solving, hopefully from that person themselves later in life. So we have several different dimensions of our program. We talk about values and skills, a social life, rewards, motivation, and then greater goals. And I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, but pretty soon I'm going to slot those into this framework of the discussion. And I thank you for joining me today, Dr. Peele.
Pleasure.